All right, it's time to start the session. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The people who are joining from different time zones. Welcome to today's Conversational Interfaces Academy session. Before I jump into the topic, as usual, I want to talk about our additional resources. We have community forums available for virtual agent NLU. We also have forum for agent chat, AWA, and sidebar. Do visit these forums to see a latest content or find out what the other customers' questions been posted and how the answers been responded in it. Our expert from ServiceNow will also respond if you have any questions that's being posted in the communities. Each of our Conversational Interfaces Academy sessions are recorded and posted in our YouTube. Today's session will also get posted by tomorrow into the YouTube channel. So please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Conversational Interfaces Academy. With that said, today's topic is how to get live agent support within Microsoft. Myself, Samyuktha Reddy, I'm an outbound product manager working in conversational interfaces platform products. Today, I have Chris Fulton. He's a ITSM solution consultant. He's going to present how this configuration can be done between Microsoft Teams to get the live agent support for any Microsoft Teams users to connect with. Quick highlight about our agenda. So Chris will be talking about the overview, and then he'll also talk about what you need for the plugins. And then he will give the highlights, high-level steps for the configurations and some resources. Then he'll show a demo how the configuration works. And at the last 5 minutes, we will leave for Q&A. If you have any questions during this session, please do post your questions in the Q&A panel so that our panelists will try to respond. If not, at the very end, I will also go through those lists so that Chris and myself can help to answer those questions. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Over to you, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Welcome, everybody. I'm looking forward to sharing a lot of information with you today. And I'm going to start out with an overview of what it is we're accomplishing on this call. Once you've gone through this setup, what you'll get is essentially what we're showing on the screen today. The idea is that our employees are living and working in Microsoft Teams on a daily basis. And so on the left-hand side, we have what we call a requester, somebody asking for help. In this case, it's Joe, one of our employees. On the right-hand side, we have one of our live agents, and that could be someone working the service desk or HR or any various different positions within your organization. The idea is that we don't want Joe to have to learn yet another interface. You're already standardized on Microsoft Teams, so let's keep him in that interface and allow him to interact and get support. So Joe reaches out through the Teams interface into into ServiceNow, and he wants to get help in this case because he's got a meeting coming up, and he just wants to validate that his catering order is ready. Now, I mention that specifically because once he types in his query, then the AWA, which is noted there right next to the live agent, that's the advanced work assignment. That's a component within ServiceNow that basically does the routing of work regardless of what channel it comes in from. And I mentioned Joe's asking about catering. So obviously we want that to go to the right person that can handle that request, as opposed to somebody that might be asking about a password reset. So Joe types in his query in Teams. The advanced work assignment within ServiceNow takes over to route it to the right queue and the right person with the skills to answer his question. Now, Beth, on the right-hand side, she responds and says, sure, let me help you. So the conversation starts. They're able to work out the issue. Beth solves whatever question or query that he has, and then they close the conversation. This is something we all do in our personal lives every day. So it's really about the experience of keeping the employee in the interface, Microsoft Teams, and not having to introduce a new chat interface. So that's the overview of what we're going to be setting up, and I'll show a demonstration of this live. But let's get into what it takes to get this working in your instances. So obviously, if you know ServiceNow, there's plugins required to get these different components set up. Now, there's two different sections on this slide. The reason is you may be at a different area in your journey on ServiceNow than one of your peers. And so the prerequisites I put up there because first you need to have the conversational interfaces working. In other words, you need to have the chat functionality in your instance installed. And there's a couple plugins required to do that if you haven't done it already. There's the agent chat plugin, which basically provides the conversational interface for the agents to be able to have that chat channel available. There's the virtual agent plugin, and the virtual agent plugin, you'll see when I interact in the demonstration that I'm going to asking for a live agent. But before that live agent takes over, the virtual agent is what I'm interacting with. And so that needs to be configured. And then lastly, the scenario that I'm going to show is an employee reaching out to the service desk for help. And so I'm going to be demonstrating this from the viewpoint of a support desk agent, and they're going to be interacting in what we call the Service Operations Workspace, which is part of ITOM and ITSM. Both of those products make use of Service Operations Workspace. So once you have the prerequisites going, the next thing is to set up Microsoft Teams. And this is going to take coordination from both the Microsoft Teams admin as well as the ServiceNow admin. And we're going to walk through those steps and show primarily what the ServiceNow team has to do, but also discuss what the Microsoft side of this is as well, because there is coordination. So let's go to the next slide. Now, on that last slide, the last bullet, I'm showing a screenshot of what that is. And so really the first step in doing this is to install a plugin, which is called ServiceNow for Microsoft Teams. It's actually what I call a parent plugin. You'll notice that towards the bottom in the red rectangle, it says matching apps for. So to get to this, I go in and type in plugins. Within plugins, you notice that I search for Microsoft Teams. I'm presented with this screen here, and I could go ahead and click install and allow it to install all 4 of those apps that are described as part of this. But you can also go in and pick and choose which ones if you want to be more selective. In other words, it's installing support for IT service management, HR, Notify, and Microsoft Teams meetings. If there's one of those or a couple of those you don't want to install, you can uncheck those during the installation process, or you can leave them all installed. It's not going to affect your instance or cause any negative issues. Next. All right, so once the plugins are installed, now we're going to talk about configuration. And this is really where most of the work comes in. And it's only a handful of steps, but this is where the coordination that I mentioned comes in between the Teams admin and the ServiceNow admin. So the very first thing we have to do is we need to have a common integration user created in both systems, both on Microsoft side as well as the ServiceNow side. Now, in step 1 there, it says specifically to create the Now MSFT integration user. That is a user that you can choose the name. You can call it whatever you'd like. If you have a naming standard for integration users that you create, please use that. If you don't have a name, that's a suggested name that we use in a lot of our documentation. In fact, I'll refer to that user throughout the rest of this presentation in that same name, the Now Microsoft integration user. So step 1 is really on the Microsoft Teams admin side, and they need to create a user with the name of their choice, and they need to give it the role of application administrator. And also, when they create that user, it's going to create an email address for that user. That email address is important because we're going to need it on the ServiceNow side as we move forward. Now, the next 2 steps are done in ServiceNow, and I have some screenshots to go along with this. But before we get to those, just understand that number 2, we need to create the user in ServiceNow. So we'll do that first. And then number 3, we're going to install the Teams applications and integration within the ServiceNow instance. There's also a couple links here for you. So if you want to follow up, there's a knowledge article. I'm sorry, there's a community article that you can click on, and it has some additional instructions similar to what I'm going through with screenshots. There's also the product documentation at the bottom. So both of those links are available that you can click on when you get this presentation. Next. Okay, so as a ServiceNow admin, we've already had the Microsoft Teams admin create that integration user, and they've provided us the email of that integration user. Now we need to create that user on the ServiceNow side. So we go in as an admin, go to user administration, go to users, and we click the new button. Once we've clicked that, then we're presented with a form where we type in the username, email address, various information. Really, the important pieces to creating this user is to make sure that the email address for that user matches what the Microsoft Teams administrator provides you from their step, and also that this user has the external app install admin role. With those 2 things, we're set. We can save the user and then move forward to the next step. So now that we have the integration user on both sides, now we're going to go forward with installing the applications on the ServiceNow side. And so within the filter navigator, as an admin, you're going to type in ServiceNow for Microsoft and then select Install Azure Apps. When you select that, you'll be presented with this screen, and you just simply click Install. But notice right above that, it says it requires Azure admin access, right? So you'll be presented, now we'll go ahead and click Install. And you'll notice that it wants you to tell it what account you want to use to connect to Microsoft Teams in the back end. And this is where that coordination comes in between the Microsoft Teams admin and yourself as the ServiceNow admin. You notice we're selecting that common user, the Microsoft integration. Once you select that, you'll be presented with this screen. At the top, we get confirmation that everything worked from a connection standpoint. It's green, it says successfully connected. And at the bottom, you get confirmation that all 3 components were installed, signified by the green check marks. So great, that piece is done. Now we move forward and we need to create what's called a manifest. Now the manifest is basically a configuration file in a zip format that we're going to share back with the Microsoft Teams admin, and that way they can install this on the Teams interface. So the first step is to go back to the filter navigator as an admin in ServiceNow, type in ServiceNow for Microsoft, and then select ServiceNow for Teams. You'll be presented with this screen, and we're going to go ahead and click New because we're creating a brand new manifest. Now on this screen, there's really only one thing to fill out. You could change the colors and so forth if that's your desire, but the one field that isn't filled in by default is the version. And typically you start with 1.0, and if you redeploy the manifest again, you would do 1.01 and so forth. The numbering convention isn't specific. In other words, you can choose what version numbering convention you use, but it's there. That way you can track the different versions as you deploy the manifest if you make changes. So now we'll hit submit. Excuse me. Now we're configuring the virtual agent, and there's 2 options here. I would expect that most of you are going to choose the top option. This is where we connect Teams to a single ServiceNow instance. We do have some customers that have multiple ServiceNow instances, and they would select the bottom option. But again, my expectation is most of you are going to have that top option, which is the default. We're going to go ahead and hit next here. And now on this tab, this is where you have an option. If you are familiar with the Service Portal, Employee Center Pro, that is the ServiceNow one-stop shop for employees to go to get self-service. You can expose that in Microsoft Teams if you would like. and the configuration is here. So if you enable the tab with that checkbox, then you can give it a tab name on the right-hand side, and that's free form. You can fill that in with whatever name you want to call it, and that will expose the employee portal within Microsoft Teams, as well as the virtual agent that we're going to be demonstrating. So I have that enabled, and then I hit next. And so now the configuration is done, and all I have to do is click Download Manifest. And when I do that, it's going to present me with a zip file that's going to be downloaded to my laptop, and that I will need to share with the Microsoft Teams admin, because their next step is this right here. This is what it looks like on Microsoft Teams Admin Center. So with that zip file in hand, they're going to go to Manage Apps on the left-hand side. That's under the Teams Apps heading. Once they click Manage Apps, they'll be presented with this where they upload a new app. And then they simply select the zip file and click Open. Now, once that installs, and it does take 30 seconds or so to install, then they have to set up the policy. And this is, again, where you can decide who gets access to the ServiceNow components within Microsoft Teams. So by choosing Select Setup Policies on the left, then on the right-hand side, you can select who gets access. By default, we expect that most customers do select Global and provide access to everybody. But if you want to limit that, that's a Microsoft Teams decision that you can make and limit that to specific users if you so choose. But once we've selected that here, the last step is to pin the application to the Microsoft Teams interface. That way it's easily accessible. When I go into Microsoft Teams, you'll see on the left-hand side, I'll have an icon that I can select and go right into this. So that's it. It seems like a lot of steps, but they're all very short and simple, just clicking through screens. And once that's done, you'll have your you'll have everything set up and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do the demonstration. Let me take over the screen share. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. Now I've got two different screens set up here because I'm going to be playing the role of two individuals. On the right-hand side, hopefully you recognize this as Microsoft Teams. On the left-hand side, this is my ServiceNow instance. And you'll notice that I've marked myself as available, meaning that Latchme, which is the name of the service desk employee, she's available to take chats. And on the right-hand side, again, the employee has a question. He's got an issue with email. He deleted some email and wants to know if he can recover it. So he's going to reach out. Actually, he needs to reach out to a live agent first. So so he could have done self-service, and that's a path I was going down. Sorry about that. So he actually wanted a live agent and wanted to skip all of the self-help options. But you may have heard an audible warning if it was picked up. He was transferred to a live agent. Now on the left-hand side, you can see there was an audible warning and also a visual as well for Latchme. And it says, if you want to accept or reject, she's going to accept this chat. And now the chat has been connected between Microsoft Teams for the employee and on the left-hand side, the ServiceNow interface for the support agent. Now he's going to go ahead and now he's going to tell her that he deleted email. And she's, of course, going to see that on the right. Now, a couple things to notice here. On the left-hand side where I've got the support agent, everything that happened even before she was on this call or accepted the chat, all of the call history, all the text going back and forth between the employee and the virtual agent is captured here. And so she has a full context of what's been happening with that conversation, even if it was transferred from another employee or however she got here, everything will be there for her to interact with. Now, she sees that he's asked about email. And let me give you an example of how she can answer his question. Within ServiceNow, the chat interface for the agent, she has lots of options, as you can see. She could transfer to another queue. Maybe it actually is an HR question that he has, so she could transfer it to HR. She could transfer to another agent specifically. Maybe she's getting ready to leave for an appointment, but she's going to transfer it to one of her colleagues on her same team to be able to take this over. So those options are there. She could also, if the screen sharing option was needed, she could start a Microsoft Teams meeting. A couple other options here. Maybe there's a common response that they always send, such as, hey, I'm looking into your problem. I'll be back with you in a moment. We have response templates, which are those quick responses that they can get to with a few short keystrokes, and that will be sent to the user. She can request help. Maybe she needs a manager to assist her. And then finally, one of the other options is autopilot. Imagine a common question such as, I forgot my password. Instead of having to deal with that, she can send it to an autopilot, which basically handles the interaction for her. It can ask the questions such as, are you on a Mac or a PC? Get the responses, and then give the response to the user about how to update or change their password. But in this case, we're going to use this last option, Search KB. That is searching the knowledge base. And she knows that she's seen an article before on deleted email and how to recover that. So instead of her having to research beyond this, she's going to point to the existing knowledge article. So she selects that, presses enter. Now it goes back to the employee here on the right-hand side. And you can see there's a link now for him to go to the knowledge article. And when he selects that, it's going to open up another tab and provide him with a response. So this is the experience where the employee never had to leave Microsoft Teams. The agent doesn't know or care what interface he's using. She's just chatting with someone that needs support. And in the end, she's able to provide support in a consistent way, regardless of which way he came in. Now, at this point, she's provided him an answer. They're all good. They can end the conversation, and she can go ahead and end this chat. Now, what you'll also notice here that's very valuable is that in this record that we're capturing, which is called an interaction, it automatically updates who it was for, who the support agent was, how long the interaction lasted, but most importantly, what happened during that interaction. So at any point in the future, we can go back and look and say, hey, what was that question that they asked and what was the answer we had? It could also be used as a training exercise from a manager to go back and look and see what happened and provide some oversight for employees. So that's the demonstration. Hopefully that provides you with a good insight as to what this configuration will get you and how you can adopt using Microsoft Teams as an interface into ServiceNow. So with that, I think we can go ahead and open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Chris. I will go ahead and shoot you with a few questions that came up in Q&A and chat. The first question is, what is a version of ServiceNow that you're using in your instance for this demo?
I am on Utah.
Okay. And the second one is, as with Teams integration, is there Google Chat integration in place as well to archive the same, to achieve the same function in that ecosystem?
I don't believe there is. I don't know if there is offhand. Maybe that's something we can follow up on. I have not seen a Google Chat integration, but that's not to say that there's not something in play that I'm not aware of.
All right. And third question is, can we also have the survey enabled for the interactions post-conversations is completed? I can take this answer. So yes, you can configure your post-survey chats and the pre-survey chats. So all those you will be doing in your virtual designer. So whenever the virtual agent starts in Teams, before it tries to look for the live agent, it will trigger the surveys and ask all the list of questions to collect the information from the user and pass it over to the live agent. And once the conversation is completed, you can also send the post-survey questions that how the conversation went, is the user got all the answers, and what more he feels with the experience. All those sort of questions you can configure. And I'll jump into the next question. Ekta Sharma has asked us, when did we set up an interaction to be created? And she gave little clarification on that question. It could be a case or incident or anything. Maybe I missed the steps where we set up for an interaction to be created.
Yeah, so that's actually part of ITSM, that setting up of an interaction record. Historically, we had what's called a new call record that was part of ServiceNow. But within the modern ServiceNow, I'll say, now that the new call record option has been deprecated, we've replaced that with an interaction. And that is the default behavior that we have when a new chat comes in, because we don't know necessarily what the topic is about. Now, what you may not have seen on the screen, since I was sharing two screens, from that interaction, once we've determined what the employee wants, we can then launch into creating an incident or any other type of record within ServiceNow from that interaction. And that interaction then gets linked to that record that we create. So a typical scenario is a chat comes in, they say, I need help with some technical issue. The interaction record gets created, but from there, the agent clicks create incident, and the incident gets created and linked to the interaction record.
Thank you, Chris. Next question. We have already in place a traditional integration in our company between Microsoft Teams with ServiceNow using the ServiceNow app available, Microsoft Teams Store app. Is it recommended to change the integration to this way shared? Because this option / Teams call is not in place nowadays.
Read that last part again. I think it was related to the Start Teams meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you may be on a different version depending on when you installed that. So that would be something that maybe reach out to your core account team, and they can help you navigate what version you're on of the plugins for Microsoft Teams, and then get that help you with understand maybe what version you need to be on. I am on the latest version, and I don't have the version number handy offhand, but I just installed this last week, so it may just be an issue of versioning.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, one other piece on that. If you recall, when I set up the very first plugin, one, and it had 4 different applications it was installing. It was Teams for ITSM, Teams for HR, Teams for Notify, and Microsoft Teams Meetings, which was one of the plugins. I would also check that and make sure you have that plugin enabled. If you don't, then go and update your plugins, and that should probably fix it.
And just to add to Chris' point, if you are using other workspaces like CSM, FSM, ISM, so some of these capabilities are specific to those workspaces. So the best way is check with your account executives and get all those informations. And as Chris suggested, I highly recommend you to look into those plugins which you are installing to look for all these capabilities. I'll jump to the next question. Can you use remote actions such as clear Teams cache from next thing through Teams? I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, I don't know either. We should probably capture that and do a little research.
Then I'm moving to the next question. Our company wants to implement single chat bot on internal platform, and when people ask questions related to ServiceNow, they want to immediately show exact response. What is your recommendations for this use case?
I'm trying to make sure I fully understand the question.
Okay. I think this is more about they want to implement single chat bot internally on their platforms, and they want to display immediate responses as in exact ones, like predefined ones. And what's the recommendations? I think, Victor, you can answer this one. I feel this is more towards the virtual agent. Like if they implement virtual agents, pretty much all those predefined responses, they can just show it in their chatbot.
Yeah, I don't know where. Victor, are you there? Well, I'll take a shot at it. So yeah, that makes sense in that context. Then essentially, the virtual agent has out of the box predefined conversations, such as what's the status of my ticket and so forth. And so what you'll need to do is to make sure that the different topics that are being asked in the chat have an associated conversation in the virtual agent. And if there are things that are being asked that you're not getting a response from, you'll be able to manage that because we do keep track of what things are being asked and the responses from the virtual agent. So as someone owning the chat process, you'll see that maybe people are asking about, I don't know, some type of support issue, and there's not a chat conversation. And that will give you an opportunity to add that so future queries are responded to automatically. So again, I would go back and look at virtual agent conversations as a way to support that.
Thank you, Chris. We are a little over the time, but there are a few questions. Let's take a shoot at those questions.
Sure.
And the next question is, we integrated virtual agent with Teams, including live agent. However, our KBs and topics don't render the same in Teams as they do with the virtual agent web client. What are we doing wrong?
I don't know that necessarily you're doing anything wrong based on the question and not any more context. There are configuration items within ServiceNow to control how the items are rendered within Teams. So you may have noticed that when I did it and I clicked on the knowledge article, it actually rendered it in another tab, which gave the native ServiceNow rendering of the knowledge article. You can also have the option of rendering it as the same place as the parent, in other words, within Microsoft Teams. It's hard to say without knowing how you have it configured, but there are options for how and where the rendering occurs, and that's set up under the Conversational Interfaces application.
And the next question, we have integrated Teams and virtual agent. After clone PRD to dev, production to dev, we have hard time to make dev connect to Teams. Do we need to preserve any tables?
I don't know offhand. That would probably be a better question for support or reach out through the community.
God, I can quickly give an answer to that. So if you have two different instances, one for the production, one for the dev, and when you have done your integration with the teams, you also need to make sure in your integration, which instance that you are, you're linking with your Microsoft Teams. Maybe you might have just done with the production and not with the dev. That might be the issue. So I would highly recommend you can raise a ticket with our support team. They can help you. And the next question, how do we change the look and feel of the conversation in Teams?
It depends on what you mean look and feel. If it's the colors and the fonts and so forth within Teams, that's actually going to be a Teams configuration. ServiceNow does not dictate or control the look and feel of the Teams interface. So when I demonstrated on the right-hand side, I had that purple color for the employee. That would be something that the Teams administrators would have to work with.
Great. And the next question. So Meg, I'm reading your question. To make it not so blocky, we need more context to answer this question. So you can type the further while I take the next questions. The next one is, if you make any change to a topic in the virtual agent, will that also show in Teams, or does it have to be reconfigured again?
Great question. Yeah, so you do not. So Teams is just another window into ServiceNow. So once you have it integrated and working, there's no additional steps. So I would say a different way, the way that it's done, whether it's Teams or the virtual agent in the portal, really doesn't matter. It's really about updating the conversation, make sure it's saved and published and tested, and it will work in all different interfaces.
And we got the last question. Nano videos are not rendering correctly in Teams virtual agent. Is this a known issue?
It's not known to me. That's not to say that there isn't an issue maybe out on our support site that I'm not aware of.
And I feel this is also a good question to ask to your account executives, or raise a support ticket. Let the support team can help you if there is any issue with your configuration. So with that said, we have covered all the questions, and thank you everyone for joining today's session. Please do look out for our recording and post it in our YouTube channel. And I'll also posting all the resources that you need in that YouTube description. And stay tuned for our next Academy session. Thank you.